this point, we've covered the mind, right? We've understood why we're in this process, right? We just heard from my good friend Corey Benz, and he laid out burning away that fear, right? Burning away what is holding us back, and that just, you got to burn that away. And so that's been fantastic. So my next guest, I followed him for quite some time through Instagram, which I love. This is what I love about social media, being able to connect this way. And so I want him to introduce himself. I've known Kane digitally, if you will, for probably over a year now. And he's got an incredible story. He's got a very successful business. He's in a place that I really love in Australia. So Kane, thank you so much for being part of this and coming aboard. So if you would just take 5 minutes, if you will, introduce kind of yourself, what makes you, your background, and then we'll get into the whole why of what you do.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Cameron. So Aussie born, Aussie raised, live in Sydney, grew up here. I'm 34 now. Grew up in Sydney with a single mother. Parents were divorced, came from not the most successful, educated upbringing. Good, hardworking mother. Where I am now, fast forward many years later, went through school, was kicked out at age 14. So the school system failed me. Very ADHD driven kid, a lot of energy, very keen to learn, but just a bit abstract. School system didn't cater for that. And ended up in a boys' home. Went from there. Was sort of told that, school wasn't for me, just get a labouring job, just accept it. This went on for years. Then in my early 20s, I read a couple of books, and I think it was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
Probably know the book, man. Yeah. And long story short, that sort of just gave me a light bulb that thinking you don't need the traditional education. You don't need to come from the most successful backgrounds. And that sort of opened up my mind to this whole new world of thinking, maybe I could invest, maybe I could have this passive income, maybe there's a different way to doing things. And the concept of the book is, but for some of the people that might be listening or, watching this, it could be, you don't have to be the rich dad is the dad that went the entrepreneurial road, and the poor dad was the one that went the academic road, but he's a slave to his job and his salary's capped. And that just sort of triggered something in my mind. Mm-hmm. And later on, I was really good at maths. That was probably a strong subject. So I just went on with financial planning, got a job, started investing, sort of had to go back, educate myself in my early 20s. My high school education was 14 years old. Had a bit of a criminal record. So all these things were limiting in my mind, limiting my beliefs. Mm-hmm. And years later, ended up becoming a financial planner, a partner in a large firm. From that firm, went on to separate from the firm as a partner into my own business. And, I've had some adversity since, but made it on a really good path. And then I actually started going back and working with some of the charities that helped me, like the youth centres, the Boys Town that I lived at, the boys' home. I went back and became one of the first, or I was the first foundation board member ever that ever went to the school after nearly 85 years of existing. Boys Town's in America too, so it's the same lineage of the Boys Town home. Mate, I've just experienced some really cool things. I've been exposed to some really harsh adversities, I suppose. I've seen a different world, but it's painted a very interesting perspective in my life. Yeah. But yeah, that'll be the summary, Cameron, man, to be honest.
Dude, there's a lot in there. I mean, we could go on from, ADHD, which I know that feeling, right? I remember just always being told, my parents would always get called into the principal's office or, meet with a teacher, and they would always say, well, he's just a very high-strung kid. He's very active, and they didn't have there was not that title when, I was growing up in high school. And I just, if I got bored quick, which often happened, which is a lot. So I can totally understand that. I mean, single mom, we could go into a whole thing with the single mom, but there's just so much to unpack. But I want to get into, this when you get into financial planning, because it's not a very, I mean, hey, people get into it, then that's a huge space. I mean, there's just so much going into it. So I want to read this real quick because I was doing some research online, but the space you're in is very competitive. Last report that I saw there are over 26,000 financial planners in Australia, which, I mean, that's Australia. I mean, I'm in America, you're in Australia. That's crazy. So what drove you to enter a space that's very competitive? I mean, like you said, you went in with a partner and then you left and you started TruNorth. So help us understand what drove you, what got you into that space of saying, financial planning, this is where I want to go.
When I got one of my first sort of labouring jobs, I was a tradesman, like an electrician sort of job. I went and worked in the mines in the desert part of Australia, call it like Central Australia, where it's just red dirt. Mm-hmm. And that was the only sort of low skilled job I could get that was decent paying. It's long hours, dangerous work. And I remember working in the mines and I started to get a bit of money and I had to manage it. And I decided to do finance online. I was like, I need to get adequate at some skill. I didn't really have much skill. And right. I thought I liked it and I enjoyed it. I had a passion. I liked the share market. Something that like at school I couldn't pay attention, but for the first time I could sit there and read a book in a week. It just caught me. I thought about the next time I could read the book or learn something, and it became exciting for the first time. And I realized that I could learn something, and I had the attention and the ability, and I wasn't limited in my ability. And that's how it started, just to do a course to manage my own money. But after 2 years of really struggling to go through the course, like learning online is extremely hard for someone that doesn't have a long attention span, as you can imagine. Yeah. And I tried to quit a few times. It was times where I was like, I can't effing do this. Like, it's not for me. Like, you're trying to learn online. You're not in that work environment. I was working in a mine with blokes that are just, completely different to any corporate. And finally finished it. And then one day I thought maybe I'll try and get a job. And I reached out to an uncle of mine that used to work high up in the bank, at my mum's sister's partner. Mm-hmm. And he pretty much told me that, almost in certain words, that maybe I should reconsider. I don't have a degree. I just did a diploma online. That was really hard for me. Right. It'd be hard. And then I thought, no, I'll go apply for jobs. And I applied for one job. And when I called up to see if they got my resume, the guy said, we had 35 people that got masters in financial planning, let alone everyone else with a degree. He said, mate, do yourself a favor and get a degree or don't bother. And jeez. that was harsh, man. But I think there was a part of me that just, once I started to believe it was possible, I wanted to prove people wrong. I enjoyed it that much. You see mm-hmm. these success stories, or the guy that 1% of someone that makes it to the top or wins, or, and I focused on that. I didn't focus on the 99% of things that could go wrong. And then I got into finance, and it was hard the whole way. My first internship, the only one in there without a degree. They took out of 200 applicants, they took 20 people. So I don't know if you watched the movie The Pursuit of Happiness.
Love that show. Mate,
show. It was almost like that. I was the guy that honestly, I got took out of all across Australia. This big bank took in 200 interviews. There was like 3 or 4 stages. Then we went to 20 across Australia. And then every 2 weeks there was a test. If you didn't get 80%, you got dropped. And it was 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6, 8, 10. So it was 5 stages. At the end of that, you got 9 months in a live practice, and you had KPIs, and you had to bring in clients. Then it was intense. And wow. I remember, man, it was fun. Wow. And So I was this uneducated kid. So I remember when they said, let's pull out Excel and PowerPoint, and I didn't even know what they were because I come from a mining background, high
Yeah,
school
yeah.
level of 14. I looked around thinking, what are they talking about? And I remember when we first did our first calculation, I used Excel like a calculator. I was typing it in, not using the formulas. So I noticed early on my weaknesses were
Mhm.
the academics. My weaknesses were the tools and knowing how to use things, right? So I was so far behind. I actually won that internship at the end of the year. I surpassed everyone by a huge margin based on the percentage. They're only
Mhm.
obviously small numbers because we're all interns. But I got poached from that job by the practice I went into, became a partner. But the only thing I had was people skill. The way I
Mhm.
grew up around a lot of street kids. Had to be a little bit more different and had to have character and how to talk. And I think they were the skills that helped me. I started at 7 and I finished at 7. So they were my two strengths. I could talk better than people that come from the academic background, and I
Yeah.
could work harder. And I put those two together, and I struggled at the paperwork. I struggled at the spreadsheets, and I wasn't as quick, but I still won. And Matt, I remember people in the intern started to, spread rumors, say things, say that, you obviously like, and people started to try and kick me when I was at the top, and I was like the underdog. And it was just a funny experience. And then I, went into this partnership. I got poached by someone. He come in, this guy, and he pretty much pulled me aside in the intern and said, if you can come from a mining background,
Yeah.
with no education, he goes, if I can get hold of you for a couple of years, I'll show you how to do this properly, and offered me a job, and went into a partnership with him 2 years later, as we built that business. But and that's how I ended up in finance, and I just got really good at it. Very competitive space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at a young age, I think I got a really, really good mentor. This guy that took me in taught me a lot really quickly. It was long hours, but I think it's all paid off. Just
Oh,
build a bit of resistance.
man, I'm talking to the Australian version of the pursuit of happiness. I mean, that is fantastic. I don't know how many people would have just quit. I mean, I bet just listening to that. I mean, Eric Thomas, I follow him, Dr. Eric Thomas, or he's known as ET,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
pop preacher. He always will tell
he's a
people, look,
legend.
man, he's like, it took me 12 years to get a 4-year degree. And I think it's, and I listen to what you're saying. I mean, it's like using Excel as a typewriter. I mean, I could just see punching numbers. And I mean, just seeing that and listening to it. I mean, at any point you could have just listened to the naysayers. You could have just listened to the people that were like, you're not going to do it. I mean, harsh reality. Oftentimes we get the biggest critics are the people that we love, trust, and respect. And even the bigger ones, it's simply, are within kind of a family of friends space. And it's amazing how you just persevered and pushed through. And oftentimes it comes from just, how we grow up and just that never quit attitude. And I think that is it's important for people to hear that. I mean, to never quit, never give up, because when you quit, you only quit on yourself. And I think that's just amazing. But let's keep going because I want to get into some of the other parts of the aspect and break down exactly what you were saying. But now you were poached, which I think is funny, right? Here's this kid with no formal background, the street knowledge. I mean, let me I need to expand. We need to talk about this street knowledge for a little bit because I think it's very important, right? Especially for professionals, right? To understand there's book knowledge and there's street knowledge, right? And the understanding the difference between the two. So bring us into that a little bit more of the street knowledge and talking like that. Where is that fear that no fear of just talking with people? Well, I mean, how does that help you? Obviously we understand, but how is that? I mean, this fear of just talking to strangers or picking up the phone and making a flat cold call. I mean, help me understand kind of that process of
Well,
just that street knowledge.
yeah, okay. So the two things. The awareness is the street knowledge is two things. If you grow around in more of a dangerous environment and around dangerous people, you have to be more aware and sensitive to human behavior,
Mm-hmm.
body language, tonality. Because the difference between getting yourself in the wrong situation, the right situation, can mean a lot of pain. Not just embarrassment. It could mean, severe violence. It could be, severe physical abuse, things like that. So at a
Mm-hmm.
younger age, you start to tune into the world a bit more. That's what, street smart is. So when you go into sales is that. It's not trying to sell, but it's trying to relate. They talk about that whole mirroring. You mirror the breathing, you mirror the tonality, the frequency of how high or low someone talks. And it's awareness of that. And I think I could just relate to people, life experience. Even though I was young, I was ahead of my age by far,
Mm-hmm.
which helped me against the other kids, but awareness of how people were feeling and acting. So you pick up on that. So that was the first thing. So when you're sort of around the street and stuff and it's more survival, you're forced to learn that early on than someone that's sheltered from it. The second thing you said to talk on was the no fear. So when you've got nothing to lose, you're not afraid to lose. It's different. It's like if you're up on the casino table and you've got, 100 grand in chips, you're hesitant to go all in. But if you're the guy that's got, $1,000 or you're at the bottom of the table, you easily to make irrational decisions, or you can still be rational, but you're easier to sort of take more risk if that's the
Right.
way. You're willing to go all in a bit quicker because you're less to lose. And there's more on the table. And I think I wasn't afraid of rejection. I wasn't afraid of anyone to think I wasn't good enough or someone to hang up on the phone. I had people to tell me to F off and, who the hell are you? And I used to call them back. I called people back. I had people abuse me and I'd call back until they talked to me normal. And I said, look, if you don't want to talk to me, just talk to me. Just tell me. I'm not going to call you if you just be polite. I'm just calling you to offer help. I'm here to call you to see how you are. I'm not doing anything to harm you. And then I'd get them to the point. Some people obviously never picked up and, a couple of people I'd call back and they'd pick up and talk to you in the end. Look, it wasn't like they picked up and they just bought straight away. Like most of them picked up, agreed with me, and then still proceeded to go their own way. But I just had a different mentality about, I think, the way I approached it with the whole sales and, the not worried about what people thought of me. I cared about my level of standard. Obviously, I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to raise my standard, my ability. But at the end of the day, I think when you come from a lower demographic, you don't put yourself on a pedestal, and it's not as far to fall. So there's not as much fear behind that.
Yeah. Man, that we could do a whole nother segment just on those two aspects that you went over. So now that you've learned to kind of that street smart, and you're right, man, breathing and tonality and body language. I mean, that is when you're doing face-to-face sales or on the phone or Zoom meetings, these conferences, it is critical to just be able to pick up on those key indicators, right? If somebody's leaned back with their arms folded, they're like, man, I have got to break this wall down somehow, right? Or you can hear them on the phone and they're listening, right? They're giving you the courtesy to listen, but they're not actually they're not listening to what you're saying and what the value you can bring. And man, I think if you don't, obviously this isn't like, hey, go grow up. If you're not from a rough background, we're not saying, all right, well, ditch everything and go live in a rough neighborhood for a year or two. But there are plenty of opportunities for people to learn and grow and pick up some of that street smart knowledge, which I think is fantastic. And that fear that you talked about of just rejection, I think it's funny. Just someone doesn't talk polite. You just kept calling them back and you're like, look, you may not like what I'm doing, but let's just have an adult conversation. That is fantastic. That's awesome. So let's go let's go into it real quick. You know, you in 2000, I believe that's right, 2015, you started TruNorth. Um, help me
Yep.
understand how'd you come up with the name TruNorth? I mean, where did that come from, TruNorth?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's a funny story. Not many people ask, but I was originally in the partnership. So when I went into that partnership with the person that poached me, was my mentor,
Mm-hmm.
became my business partner. I learned a lot from this individual, really intelligent human being. And I was very young and naive. So as we went into business, I started to realize that our values weren't aligned long term. He was from an old school way. I wanted to be more technology, innovative, doing all this crazy stuff. He was from if it's not broke, don't fix it. Let's just keep to what we're doing. It works.
Right.
I've made money. And in the end, I wanted to go a different way. My view was more about following what I enjoyed, what was giving more to the client, not the most profitable service. He wanted to keep it to just be very simple, be good at one thing and do it well. Don't go outside. Don't try and bring new things in. And I was like, no, I've got the rest of my life. I need to be fulfilled in this. Like, I need to feel like I'm contributing to this space. And we just disagreed, and I said, I'm going to leave. And he's like, well, you probably won't grow as much as me and all that. And I said, well, this is what I want. It was my purpose. So I looked at this as like my true north. And I wanted to follow my true north, and I want the clients that we work with to follow their true north. And that's it's individual thing, right? So what's important to you might be similar, but it will be different to the other person. And everyone has their own true north of what they want to create. And I don't want to be true north financial where we're just money. We're a lifestyle business that creates your lifestyle. We do the numbers, so we do the finance, but we're creating a lifestyle based on that person's true north. That's why we intentionally called it lifestyle. The numbers play a role, but the numbers aren't the outcome. We're not here to get you 20% on a stock. We're here to say, what do you want to achieve? But the 20% on the stock may be the reason and the thing that helps you, work one day less a week, put your kids through a private school, retire when you're 55 rather than 70, like pay off the house earlier. But what does that mean? Where's the why? What are we creating? Because at the end of the day, we look at it's health, family, experiences. They're pretty much the only things that matter. And everything comes from that. And that's sort of where the name come from. But it was like a personal realization. And then I realized that's what we really did for clients, and that was important. You get clients that come in all the time and say, I just want to get the best stocks. I want to get the best shares. It's like, why? I want more money. Why? Like, and then you drill down. It's like that had a purpose at the end of it that would actually do something for their life rather than just make more money. Because at the end of the day, all the money in the world's not going to do anything if you don't know where to apply it or what to do with it, or you don't know what it's got to create in your life as far as a better life or a better form of happiness. And it normally entails doing things and who you do those things with.
I don't think people. I'm going to kind of pause on this real quick. Let's just break this down real quick for our listeners and for those that are reading the book and the audio version of this. Look, so Kane goes in and has no formal educational background, goes in and wins this job. 200 applicants, goes in top in there, top true, that whole true Chris Gardner story just starts from the bottom, gets to the top. Guy comes in and poaches him and says, hey, now you're going to come part of my business and we're going to teach you. So then he's teaching and learning. And then he says, all right, well, we want to be innovative. And his mentor is like, no, we're going to stick with status quo. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And he's like, I'm going to leave because I got to follow my passion and my purpose. And then he's told, well, yeah, you're probably not going to be nearly as successful as me. I mean, I could just see you leaving this big firm, and probably people are like, what are you doing? Like, why are you leaving? And then you start this, and then he's like, why are you leaving? Like, why are you giving up, quote unquote, freedom, right? And people try to equate money with freedom when it doesn't. You're hitting it on the head. You can't build a life around just money. I mean, you can't, in the sense of, you can't just think, if the more money I have, the happier I'll be. You know, I know plenty of multimillionaires that are just unhappy with where they're at, but I mean, the money's good, so they're not where they're at. And I love that following that true north, the purpose. You know, when people understand their purpose, when they understand what they're doing and the direction that they're going, all the naysayers and all the noise out there, it doesn't matter, because you know the purpose, you know how you're getting there, and there's all these little milestones that are along the way. I think it's just, man, that is so good. I mean, we could stop here and let everybody digest that, but we won't, because we got a few more things to get to. And man, that's fantastic. So I want to move back to now the giving back. You talked about going onto the board. I love it. So I wanted to this aspect I want to read this here. Coming up in life, right, there are more times than not we are overlooked by society, you know, as cast off. You know, you do a lot of work with these quote unquote cast off. You were part of that program, this boys program. I mean, you're part of the youth project. You're on the board of Boys Town, working with the PCYC Australia, and you're working on building a retreat for youth. It's not a small task. It's not a small task. So, first, what is the purpose behind giving back? I mean, where is that? Help us get into that understanding of giving back. Giving back to essentially the place that you know you learned that the hard knocks from. So why give back? You know, why give back?
Well, it's this constant thought that used to go through my head a lot for many years, and it was more on the basis that statistically I shouldn't be where I am. You know, I beat the odds, right? Not just on getting out of the life I was in, the upbringing I was exposed to, all the people I was around, just having a normal life and coming out of that life just into a normal life, having an average job, you know, having a family, and you know, not going down a really, really terrible path. The odds are very, very slight. But I actually went beyond that. And that's when I first proved people wrong, or proved the odds wrong. And I was like, people like, oh, you shouldn't, you know, go into finance. I remember I used to work in the mines, and folks used to see like stock charts in my room and books, and they just thought, what the hell are you reading a book for, man? You freaking work in a mine. And then years later, running into a couple of these guys that we worked with at a funeral. One of the guys who worked with died many years later. And I remember I had a business at the time. And they're like, oh man, I've seen you on that thing and on social media, and you're killing it. And it's just this moment of like, holy shit, everything that could have stopped me could have been just me accepting what they pushed on to me as their beliefs. And I chose to say no. And because I didn't allow those thoughts to dictate my own, I pushed the status quo. And then when I got to this point now, and it's like, okay, I'm pretty privileged. I'm not ultra wealthy. I'm not like flying around in jets, but you know, I'm living I could live a pretty above average life, and I'm headed on down a path where I eventually will be able to retire. I think well before my retirement, and I'll be able to do a lot of cool things. But it's not even, my life is, I could live off such minimal wage. I don't really want a lot. And then I realized that it's almost like this luck I want to pass on. I want people to understand it's possible. I want to instill belief in people. I want to be that spark that sets them on that path to get the momentum of belief, because I didn't really wake up and go, hey, I want to be all the way up here doing all these things. It was like, hey, I might just get up this next level. And then when it happened, I went, oh, that's interesting. I achieved that. Everyone was wrong. And then it was like, maybe we'll go a bit higher. And ever since then, it's just like, can we go a little bit higher? Can we go a little bit higher? And I think that's where you start to realize there's unlimited possibility. And the only thing that holds you back is not trying, you know, or not doing, or not taking action. And, you know, now it's like, well, I one day, you know, when I say I want to own my own retreat, it's not like I'll probably do it at, you know, I'm in my 30s now, so it probably won't even be 40, probably won't even be 50, it might be 60. Be somewhere like 20, 30 years down the track, you know, do all this stuff in business. I do a lot of volunteer for youth. You know, I've done foster care in a teenage kid. You know, it's something I really enjoy contributing to, and I feel like you should give back. It's almost like, I don't know, I think guilt or a gratitude thing. it's a bit of both. It's a very mixed emotion. But I still don't understand, was it luck that got me out? Because it almost has to be luck. You know, it's like the odds are so far against me that, like I said, I landed on the spot in that job, and then I succeeded in the internship, then I got poached, and then it's like, there's been heaps of adversity through it, but it just seems like it just gets better every couple of years. There's a bit of adversity and things get better, and it's just like it keeps just putting me on this path. And I feel like maybe there's something I'm meant to just, you know, share through my life experience back to some other kid. You know, that all they need is someone just to tell me, you can do it. I've done it. You know, it's got to be okay. You know, believe in yourself. Take that job. You know, because if I listen to a lot of the negative people, the limiting people, I definitely wouldn't have done it. I would, you know, I would have been still sitting in a labouring job, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, doing an honest living. But I would have had a labouring job. I wouldn't have pushed my education. I probably wouldn't have believed in myself. I probably would have left it at that, and could have easily accepted life for what it was.
Man, I don't even know where. I mean, we could run millions, but so then, how does not just, I mean, focusing on, I mean, obviously you have to be a high performer, right? Especially in the space that you're in, right? You especially, you come from nothing, you get a good intern, you get a good job, and then next thing you know, you're in the status quo. You're just kind of living comfortable, right? And then the comfortability, it's like, how do I get uncomfortable being uncomfortable? How do I get comfortable being uncomfortable? And then you get poached. And then you're, all right, we're kind of in this new groove and it's now comfortable. So it's like, how do I get comfortable being uncomfortable? And you start this whole thing. And now we're giving back. And so how is giving back help you, you know, continue to be at performing at such a peak level? How is it that you give back and it helps you, you know, stay consistently peaking, or, you know, at that top level of just being a high performer?
Oh, well, interesting question. Really good question, actually. One of the first experiences I had was I started working with one of these youth centres. So a lot of the youth centres in Australia are run by, you know, police officers. They have a youth police officer that works with the kids. And I had a lady that worked with me from 12 years old all the way through my teens, in and out of trouble with the police, in and out of school, suspended, kicked out, removed. And I seen her in the paper 8 years ago. And I've seen her in the leader. And my mum actually goes, hey, so-and-so's in the leader. She's still working with the kids. She was running all these new programs, getting sponsor in. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to call her up and reach out to her. And all I did is just want to touch base with her and thank her. She ended up inviting me in to start speaking. And then she started to send me around to different states in Australia to talk. And then sent me to the police academy, like the largest police academy almost in Australia, to talk to like 500 police officers. And I was like, I'm the last person that should be presenting to police, you know? And I was just cracking up. And I was just laughing when we went down there, and she drove me down. And but I shared the insight to, you know, troubled youth and the behaviours and the psychology, just so some of these police officers can understand from my perspective that some of these kids can change. You just need to give them a chance, and you know, not too many chances. But yeah, and then one of the first times I spoke at a high school, I had kids come up to me at the end of it, like 12-year-old, 14-year-old kids that were like the naughtiest kids in the school. I had one kid break down in front of me and cry and start sharing stuff about his, you know, traumatic, household situation, let's say, you know, and like even the teachers were shocked. And I just got this overwhelming feeling of just, it was unbelievable. It was better than any business success. It was better than any KPI or any monthly P&L that we hit, you know, anything that surpassed anything. And I just couldn't explain it. And it was so overwhelming. If you could just have that experience where you actually contribute someone to someone's life, I never realized how fulfilling it could be, just to say all the stuff I went through now had a purpose and a meaning behind it of why it might have happened. And it made me look at my own past in a more grateful way rather than pain or suffering or victimized. And then I've used that now to keep pushing. And then, you use that as what pushes me forward, not what holds me back, sort of thing.
Oh man. Now you have you have this attitude of gratitude, right? You grew up a certain
Yeah.
way, but because that was your path, right? That was the path that was yours. You've now turned that from a negative into a positive, as cliched as it is, but it's true.
Mhm.
I mean, that internal drive now that it's amazing when you see the spark in kids, right? When you can connect with a child from a similar background or from a space where they can just understand, it elevates you and it takes you to this new space of there's now this new purpose of, hey, I've got to do, it's not about, hitting this quota, but is I need to get this done quicker so I can go fulfill something else. And I think that is so awesome for you to just say, man, that's awesome, because what you're doing is you're giving people a clear and concise direction, right? You're giving, especially these youth that you give back to and you talk to. I've seen a lot of your videos where you're talking to talking to youth. And so when you help them, youth, and you're speaking, you're giving them, direction. Can you, give us two aspects, if you will, that has had the most profound impact currently to your professional, in your professional career? Whether it's, one of them was the boy who comes up sobbing to you, telling you about that. How does that impact you? How does that keep you as a professional? How does it help you kind of just be grateful for what you have and keep focusing on what you could potentially bring into others' lives?
I think it's the fuel. It definitely fuels. Humans we all have a depletable willpower. Willpower is a resource that after so much resistance, you get worn down. People get run down, you get sick. That's why you get sick. Entrepreneurs get sick all the time. We overwork ourselves, we lack sleep. So willpower is a depletable resource in my eyes. And I think you need something more that comes from the gut, that comes from emotion, that drives you beyond. That's why purpose is so important. And you really need to be able to hook into that. And human beings have so much strength when under the sort of right circumstances, the right reasons. Like a parent would die for the child, do anything. But then you see all these parents that just quit on their own goals. Your parents won't even go out and work hard for their own future, but they'll sit there and they'll die for the kids. And I'm sure they would. But it's just like we would actually do more for others than we'll do for ourselves. It's human nature, right? It's built into us, especially parent to children. And sometimes we'll do more for a friend than ourselves. And it's easy to fix something else. And so I think finding that resource, and for me, it was something that lit me up. I think it gave me hope. It gave me hope that everything that I got up to this point wasn't just to provide me a comfortable life or a better life for my family. Yeah, I realized that a lot of the pain and suffering and adversity throughout my life had a meaning. It happened for a reason, and it happened to build me up and make me the person I am, to be able to share my story, because I can connect through those stories. I can relate to pain. I can relate to suffering, and pain and suffering doesn't really, it doesn't really separate itself in any way. Pain is pain, suffering, trauma is trauma. So someone can be traumatized as a kid because their 20-year married parents separate because dad's cheating on mum, right? And it doesn't mean that the trauma that they can feel could be the same as someone that's come from an abusive family. The story of how the traumas come off can almost be the same. And if you get severe trauma enough, it can cause damage to the circuitry in the brain and the psychology and development of children. That can happen if someone's allowed enough emotional stress, and it's trauma from their parents breaking up and they've come from an affluent family. There's no difference to that feeling. We can still relate on that level. So, it's like when you say you felt love, like love's the same, and you can't explain it, but you can feel it and share it with someone. So, it's helped me sort of understand that whole relatable piece. So
so with that, I mean, give us two or 4 points that you try to convey to these kids, that when you're talking to them. I mean, you go in and you speak. I mean, obviously they want you to speak on a topic, but what are 2 or 4 points that you're trying to convey to these kids about your topic, or just life in general? I mean, what you going with this purpose? So bring us into that space on what are you trying to convey over to these kids?
good question. There's normally a few things. Trying to get young people to think ahead. Think as you go through such a social social change. When you're growing up and you hit puberty, it's about the cool kids and being seen, and trying to do the right thing. And I share a couple of stories of my childhood where I watched some of my mates like go to jail, and some pretty other serious stuff, like dead and end up on drugs. And at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for you. And one of the trigger points of change in my life also was a few events and letting my family down, and realizing that I was raised better, and thinking about those you care about. Mine was my mum and my little sister, and I had to sort of step up and just try and get people to think differently, not be drawn in. Don't let other people dictate your views. If you want something, do it. Go for it. You're better off to try, sort of thing. But yeah, you can't feel sorry for yourself. The world is harsh, and I talk to a lot of kids that come from troubled backgrounds, and the question before that I answered was being relatable to pain. So I can walk into a room and say, and they all think I'm a guy in a suit still, but and I can say to them, like, I've been where you've been, and I'm here, so I know what it takes to go from where you are to here. And I'll tell you what, one thing is, you can't sit there just feeling sorry for yourself. I know life sucks, and I agree with them. It fucking sucks. Sorry for the language, but it sucks going to a broken home. And it sucks that your dad's not there, or it sucks because you don't have money for that holiday, or it sucks that whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's got to hurt more if you don't change. And that's also it's. And that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to be broke? Do you want to be broke your whole life? Do you want to have broken relationships your whole life? Do you want to have a broken family with your own kids? Because if you don't change, if you don't fix who you are, you'll have a bad relationship with your partner. You have a bad relationship with your kids, and you'll have a bad relationship with money. And change is not easy, but not changing is harder. And it's worth the effort to try and change. There's no guarantee you'll get it. It's worth the effort to try.
Man, that is wow. That's just, I'm kind of in speechless, because that's what giving back, right? Giving back in that way. Now, people will probably listen to this much, just like, I didn't grow up that way. No, you're not. But what you're seeing though is, and you're hearing that given this opportunity to give back, whether it's on a small scale, big scale, whatever it may be, but it's always finding a way to give back. And I think that is the most important thing about what's been said, is performing at a high level. When you start giving back, it has a whole new purpose. It has a whole new meaning. You start to develop better. You start to read more. You start to engross more. You start to change your own nature. Right? You break through some of those own physical limitations, or those mental limitations, because the purpose now becomes bigger. It becomes greater than just, like me, my family, that it does have massive purpose, but also giving back to those that just want one shot. Everybody's looking for just a shot. Give me the shot to prove myself. And I think that is that is huge, and instilling that, and especially in the youth, because they're so open to learn and they want to learn. And when they find out, oh man, you're similar to me, you've been to that same space, you understand what that pain and hurt is like, right? I mean, that's just, it's fantastic and fantastic. I knew when I knew, well, going into this interview, I was excited, but I had no idea we were going to get into this level we're getting into, man. It's just fantastic. I'm going to wrap this up. So here's the scenario. Let me just give you this little scenario here. So you're at the beach, because obviously you're in Australia. I mean, there's probably plenty of beaches around, right? You're getting ready to go swim, and an admirer of your work comes up to you and asks, can you please give me some pointers on how to stay in the grind when everybody around me is negative? So share with us, a few actionable items that you would be able to tell this person that is, help me stay in the grind, help me stay in the grind. So give us, 2 or 4 points that you would say, here's what you would need to do.
Cool. It's a good one. So a good way to stick to a plan is preparation, right? Discipline. And how to be disciplined is structure. So having a framework of structure in place to not think, to not second guess. That's one thing. Always try and have structure, have discipline, have routine, build patterns of behaviors. The second thing is work out why you're doing it. Who's it for? Beyond yourself. Something beyond yourself. High power, high religion, a parent, a child, someone beyond yourself you can tie into when the willpower cuts out. And then you put the structure in for all the, sort of that behavior stuff, the stuff that you build through repetition. And the third thing is, I'm not sure there's too much for the third thing, but, maybe try and enjoy it along the way, and just give yourself time, be patient, because I think we spoke about this before we jumped on the call, was everyone wants the outcome, but no one wants to do the process. You just got to be realistic. It's not a friggin', it's not a Hollywood movie. It's not an Australian outback movie, depending on the country or Bollywood. But it's a process, and you got to be hungry for the adversity, and through the adversity, you will find and form the person you need to become. But you can't go and ask for something for life and not expect to transact on something on your behalf to accept it and become that person. So, you got to, if it makes sense, you got to be willing to know that it's not going to be a perfect growth. Like when adversity comes, don't quit, because if you say to yourself at some point, I'm going to eat shit, and then when that comes along, you got to go, oh, that's right, this is a part of the process. So you're planning for that and you're preempting that. So you're changing the way of how you approach it when it does arrive. Your perspective's different. And that's the one thing I know, because I've always had challenges. Like even in our industry recently, in 2017, the financial planning industry went into a royal commission. 30% of the industry went bankrupt and went under or retired. So we were in a very vulnerable position. We just left the big practice. So straight again, it hit me and it didn't faze me. I was just like, okay, what do I do? Cut cost, worked harder, went back, think about different angles on social media, just had to survive. Once we survived, now it's time to thrive, because there's a lot more clients out there because people are leaving. So, there's always opportunity, but you got to have that mindset to think of it as a challenge that comes up that you can solve the problem and work through, and it's like an achievement. So that'd probably be the third thing, if you just tie it all in.
Oh my gosh, that's just, fellow guys, if you're not just itching to get going, I don't know what else we can do to get you going, but this has been a fantastic space. I mean, we could keep going on forever, but man, I appreciate it so much. You getting on and sharing your insights, your knowledge, street smart, your book smart. I mean, you have both. I mean, you have both street and book smart now, entrepreneur smartness. I mean, it's just fantastic. So Tell everybody, Kane, tell everybody where they can find you, your social media, how they can follow you if they want to get a hold of you. Like, just tell the viewers how they can, interact with you.
Yeah, no worries, Cameron. Yeah, it was great to be on. I really appreciate it. Like, all the best to all the listeners. If anyone wants to sort of stay in contact and follow along on my journey or got any further questions, the Instagram handle is Journey of Kane. That's Kane. So reach out, mate. It's an open account. And yeah, I try and engage with everyone and just respond when I can and be transparent. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the book, mate, and seeing what's to come. I think this will be an awesome piece to a lot of people's learning.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Real quick, top 5 books that someone should either read or listen to.
Top 5. Yeah, I've read a lot of books, and I get a lot of people that ask me what book should I read, and I normally respond with, where are you at in life? Because the books will cater to that. So I will answer it though. First one for me was Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was starting out. I then read a really, really good book after that, which was the Warren Buffett's book, The Snowball Effect. Huge book. But a couple of the inspirational ones would be, what is it? It's the Ray Dalio Principles. Insane book. He had the largest hedge fund in the world, Bridgewater. Done a lot of stuff with Tony Robbins, one of the most successful CEOs in the world. No one knew who he was. Wrote a book called Principles. Another one called Emotional Intelligence, the psychology. And the 5th book, I'd say, read your book.
There we go. I love it. All right, I'm going to let you get going, man. I appreciate this time. I appreciate all you're doing. Keep up. I'll stay following you. But this has been an awesome time, and I appreciate it. So, hey,
you too, man.
I'll talk to you later.
Thanks,